Call order Finance Committee. First item on their lunch program update. I recall this was sent back from the board meeting last month to review any new input on what we may or may not lose on the federal end.
Right. There are two questions that need to be answered from the January board meeting. One of the first questions was, is there a pressing timeline? And the answer is there isn't necessarily a definite timeline, but the process itself, if to bid out, if we were to stay in the program, is 3 to 4 months. And so it would behoove us, if we're going to stay in the program, to probably have a decision this month, because if it takes 3 to 4 months, we'd like to do it while lunch programs are still in session in the schools, so we can go and visit and that type of thing. The second question was related to the free and reduced count, the free and reduced quantity, free and reduced funding. I mean, not quite sure the best word to attach to it, but that was the citizen input question. Each district has to report poverty numbers and other reports separate from the free and reduced count for hot lunch purposes. Most districts use the free and reduced count to report those numbers. So what I'm saying is for title reports, we have to report what our community poverty piece is. We use our free and reduced count to do that. For E-rate, we have to report what our poverty rate is. We use the free and reduced rate to do that. There are other ways to get the information for the poverty piece. It's a lot more complicated and more labor intensive on the district part, and probably won't give us as clean of data, if you will, like the free and reduced piece will. So we should still have a process in place, and I realize this ties into the lunch program recommendation, that we still need to collect the data. It'd be my recommendation that we do it through the free and reduced process, which obviously means if people are going to be filling out that free and reduced process, that we would have some sort of free and reduced program through the lunch program. Does that make sense?
Which is what we're doing now.
Right. So,
Which would still require us to follow the FDA mandate.
no, we can still use the federal forms to collect the data, even if we're out of the program.
But we would have to certainly offer that program and fund it ourselves.
Right.
And the question was, what is the cost of that?
Well, I didn't bring that with me. Was it about $40,000 or $50,000? 37.
To answer your question, that was Paul. The first answer to your question was yes. The second one was no. You have to, no, you do not have to. You're outside the federal program. Could you? Yes. Do you have to have the same numbers they have? No. That's what it comes down to. I mean, right now, the citizens of Waterford every year rolled into the budget vote on supplying extra money to pay for a school lunch program. In our case, we wind up being zero cost. Typically.
Yeah, the last couple of years it hasn't been, and we've talked about that.
Right. But the state law gives you the ability as a school board to pay for a lunch program. So that's what comes in.
What do you feel? What is your suggestion?
So my suggestion is we should not be in the federal lunch program. I've heard from several parents that are against the federal lunch program just because of the nutritional standards, the quality of product that the feds push on you. This all stems from the waste. It's a big one, but this all stems from they're getting less ability to choose what they want. So your student likes grapes, let's say, kindergarten, right?
I think we're all in agreement with that. The bigger question is, do we pay for free and reduced lunches ourselves?
I think we pay for some portion of something. I think you have to talk about what that's going to be. Do I believe it's the responsibility of everybody to pay for every other person's student to have lunch? I don't believe that personally. Does the school district as a whole, the board will vote on that. But I don't think it's my right to ask Bob to pay for my kids to eat. It's not my right to ask you to pay for my health care. I come from a libertarian standpoint, and it's not my right to ask somebody else to pay for it. Now, that being said, the federal government is just printing money to pay for students for lunch. However, what they're doing is imposing their will on what you give the kids to eat, which is what I completely disagree with. My student does like grapes, and they're gonna take some red,
We
blood red
understand
orange
that.
and throw it away because they couldn't have the grapes. It doesn't make any sense to throw away food.
I think we all feel the same way.
I don't know that. It's
The question is, are we going to have a free and reduced lunch program? Is our school district going to buck up $37,000 to pay for that?
That's the question. I would say a portion of that, yes. Total amount, not necessary. That's what I'm saying. Do you have to have the same cutoff as the federal government does for a poverty level? No, you don't. Do you have to give 100% of lunch to a student? Could you give a student a sandwich and a fruit and a thing of milk? And not have a full lunch of some sort? Sure, you can do anything you want with it. You're outside the federal government's directive of what they're telling you to have. Would it be easier just to say, let's follow the federal government academically? I'm sure it would. So I'm saying from a standpoint of whether you're in or out of the lunch program, to me, doesn't make a difference if the quality of the lunch program is being hindered by the federal government. The question of whether you're in or out of the lunch program from the federal standpoint is a different question of how you fund or what you want to pay for some other person's student to have lunch.
Unfortunately, it ties in directly, since if you're in the federal program, then there's a cost
I
that are
agree.
paid for. And if you're out of that program, then it's not paid for. And then who pays for it, or do we?
Yeah, well, for example, the high school was never in the lunch program until a few years ago. They were never in the FDA. Unfortunately, they chose to go into it, and now the high school is looking at going back out of it again. Just for the sake of what they're doing to the lunches for the students, the quality of food that the federal government is pushing. The fact that our person from Tauber told us that they're going to more packaged items because they don't want to test fresh foods.
You know, we've already discussed that.
Okay.
I think we're all kind of in agreement that the FDA standards are going beyond where they should. The bigger question is, do we put up with those FDA standards so that we can get this $37,000, or do we not?
Well, I would say no. That's what I would say.
I'm going to have difficulty voting on this at the board meeting until we've decided on this $37,000, how we're going to defray that expense.
Yeah.
So if we're going to bring it up for a motion at the board meeting, I think we need to decide this in committee. How are
That's fine.
we going to handle it?
That's why we're here right now. Now, my question is more the second part of this, which was the E-rates and stuff. What's the other impacts? 37,000 is one thing. Are there any other impacts of this?
E-rate and title are the biggest ones. But we can pursue other ways to collect that information, but based on what I've heard from the different departments at the state level that oversee those different areas, getting that information from people is going to be challenging. Because you're going to be asking for, tax information and that type of stuff. And I don't know that people will be as forthcoming with that as they would.
What I understand is that half of your population have to answer that question.
There is a certain threshold to be eligible, yes.